Joy 94.9.
Welcome to the Rainbow Report. News, opinion, current affairs for the rainbow community from Joy 94.9. Australia's only full-time gay and lesbian radio station. And now, your host, Doug Pollard.
News and interviews. Joy 94.9.
Well, thanks to Chris and Cam for your Drive Factory. Good evening and welcome to the Rainbow Report on the Russian repression or Putin's Pogrom, or whatever you want to call it, in case you hadn't noticed, and it seems not too many people in Australia have, although it's beginning to catch on now. Vladimir Putin's Russian government has turned on the gay community with a vengeance. Life for the Russian LGBTI community is beginning to resemble the life of the Jewish community in 1930s Germany. Sweeping anti-gay laws make any public statement or action which could be seen as approving of homosexuality, wearing a rainbow symbol, flying a rainbow flag, etc., is punishable by a fine, jail, and, in the case of foreigners, deportation after 15 days. There's even talk, well, so far, thank goodness, it is only talk, of bringing in laws to remove children, both biological and adopted, from gays, lesbians, and same-sex couples. There have been brutal breakups of pride marches, a spate of extremely brutal beatings and murders, and even an online entrapment scam by a patriotic, in inverted commas, skinhead gang. In the rest of this world, this has sparked a rash of petitions, an international day of action on Saturday at Russian embassies and consulates worldwide, and a boycott of Russian vodka. So far, Oz has signed up for the vodka thing. So tonight, the Rainbow Report talks to the leader of Gay Russia, the man who started the Moscow Gay Prides, Nikolai Alexeyev. He's currently in Geneva. We'll also talk to the organiser of the biggest petition against Putin, Hayley Conway of allout.org. She's in New York. And to expat Aussie Ed Jardine, leader of the planned demonstration, which was going to be outside Russia's London embassy on Saturday, but it's now grown so big that it's been moved down to Whitehall, quite near Downing Street. So you can see there's a lot of interest in this overseas. I believe there's also an event tomorrow in Sydney at Martin Place at around about 12:30. You'll find that on Facebook. I think it's called Putin Out for Putin. An old-fashioned kiss-in, I'm told. To help us understand what's going on, I'm joined in the studio by Dr. Graham Willett from the University of Melbourne. He's also keeper of the Gay and Lesbian Archives and expert on all things GLBTI. And we'll talk to him right after this. Please join the conversation tonight. This is How You Do It.
This is the Rainbow Report. What do you think? Email us right now, onair@joy.org.au.
And this is your host, Doug Pollard. We're talking tonight about what's happening to the gay and lesbian community in Russia and what we can do about it. Joining me in the studio, the keeper of the Gay and Lesbian Archives, Dr. Graham Willett from the University of Melbourne, who's also a bit of an expert on gay history and politics and so on worldwide. Why is this happening in Russia now?
I think it's a part of a much broader attack by Putin against kind of progressive and democratic forces. It's certainly not just gay and lesbian people that are being targeted. And because of the problems of the regime, they're looking for scapegoats, they're looking for distractions, and this is something that they've stumbled on.
I don't know. It's rather odd to me that this is almost straight out of the Hitler playbook. I know one hates to keep drawing parallels to Nazi things, and it's cause for being thrown off many a website to bring up the Nazi parallel. But the parallels for the 1936 Olympics, for example, with Sochi 2014 coming up, are somewhat eerie, aren't they?
Yeah, there's an old rule of political debate. The first person to mention the Nazis loses the argument.
Yeah.
A better comparison, I think, is Russia in the 70s, directed against the Jews, which doesn't involve the kind of massive rounding up and slaughtering that went on in Germany, even after the 30s. But a kind of systematic persecution of a tiny little minority and a quite unpopular minority. And it's playing very much out in those terms, I think.
Yeah, the Orthodox Church has weighed in as well, hasn't it?
Yeah, the church in Russia is a funny thing. It's positioned itself very close to governments. This is what it does. This is how it protects itself. The czars, the commissars, the post revolutionary regime after 91. And they're very much a state institution. They're not actually owned by the state. It's not like the Church of England, but they are close to, and this is what they do. But what we have seen recently, since the fall of Stalinism in 91, is an increase in religious belief. And that's pretty much, people go to church, but it's unconnected to church. The church doesn't really have a lot of interest in its own members. It's much more interested in being close to the government. So there's a rise in religious belief, and some of that seems to be playing itself out here.
The worst part about all this is that the laws themselves are bad enough that are being brought in, but the rhetoric that's being spoken in the Duma, in the Russian state parliament, plus these laws that are being brought in, plus the sermons that are being preached by de-orthodox clergy, they're creating a very nasty atmosphere, and there's a lot of extra legal activity going on, which I referred to in my introduction. Can you talk us through a little bit of that?
Yeah, the rhetoric is around protecting children. This is what the law says. It doesn't say you can't display homosexuality or signs of homosexuality. It says you can't do it amongst or near minors. And that, of course, means anywhere, really. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting that they felt for whatever reason, they decided to kind of...
Well, they've tapped into this old pedophilia thing.
That's right, yes. And in fact, one of the hate groups that's out there, unofficial sort of targeting of gay people, calls itself Occupy Pedophilia. So on the one hand, they're playing to that sort of grassroots Occupy stuff that was going on in the West. On the other hand, they want to position homosexuality as a kind of pedophilia in order to mobilise hate and to justify it in their own heads.
Yeah. Now, I referred to those in the introduction and also into my pre-sell in the previous programme, what these groups are doing, and they have Facebook pages and everything else going, is they are entrapping gay men, usually seems to be mostly young gay men, from off-Russian gay dating sites. And then when these guys turn up, they humiliate them, they beat them, and they film this whole thing, and they name these people, and then they put this stuff up on Facebook and up on YouTube.
And completely unchallenged. I mean, the police and the security forces, if they're not actually doing the beating themselves when it's demonstrations, are standing back and letting it happen. They're clearly not tracking people on Facebook who are identifiable. They're not hiding their faces.
Well, these guys, they're not hiding their faces. They're even putting their real names up in some instances. Yes.
Because they know they're safe. The police system, the security system is so corrupted by the authoritarianism of the last 20 years. And they're getting... this is reinforcing those views. The fact that the Duma passes laws like this is a signal to say, stand back, let them do whatever they want to do in relation to the hate groups.
Right, so we pass on from that. That's kind of like what the situation is. Now, there's a great deal of talk about boycotts of one kind or another. There is a whole raft of petitions asking for various things. There's petitions to Putin himself to say, do away with these laws. Well, that's not got a cat in hell's chance. There's petitions to boycott the Sochi Winter Olympics, which is Putin's pet vanity project, it would seem. There's petitions not to boycott Sochi. Do you think that all this boycott activity serves any other purpose other than to kind of raise awareness of the issues in the West? Will it actually have any impact in Russia at all? Isn't there a danger it'll make things worse?
I think it's important in relation to Russia because it says to gay and lesbian Russians, and indeed to democratic forces generally, you are not alone, you are not forgotten, we're out here, we're trying to do what we can. I mean, it's not going to have any impact on Putin, except, of course, he has come out publicly and said, well, of course we're not going to use this at the Olympics. Well, that's an interest. That's a concession in a sense. I don't think he was ever going to, but he feels obliged to say so. So the pressure is there from various forces. The boycott, the talk of the boycott, for or against, it doesn't really matter which way you go. The mere fact that people are talking about boycotting vodka, boycotting Sochi, keeps the issue bubbling along here, says to the Russian, our people in Russia, that you're not alone. I think they're the important, and it gives us a bit of momentum maybe to start pressuring forces here where we are, where we can have more of an impact.
Well, it's interesting that Kevin Rudd is shortly to go off to St. Petersburg for the G20 meeting, where presumably he will meet Vladimir Putin.
Yes.
Do you think he's going to say anything?
Bob Carr says that he's been talking quietly to his Russian counterparts about this. This is, the government has adopted LGBTI rights as part of their foreign policy 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Yes, I saw.
He noticed what was going on and felt obliged to comment on it. I think part of what we can do, I think, is pressure Carr and Rudd and ideally Abbott, if he's going to be the next Prime Minister, to take a stand and say, we are opposed to this stuff publicly and we will raise it at every opportunity. Whether or not he does partly depends on how much pressure we can put on him before he goes there.
Well, I've been trying to get Bob Carr to come on the programme for the last 2 weeks, and he hasn't been available. But I have had some fairly positive feedback from the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. They've recently updated their website with more stringent travel advice for GLBTI travellers to Russia. I gather there are negotiations going on between PFLAG Canberra and DFAT as well, which will mean that in a couple of weeks' time there are going to be even more detailed notes going up on the DFAT site, and by then Bob Carr may be ready to say something. Apparently they're waiting for an estimation of what's going on from the Australian ambassador in Moscow. So things do seem to be happening, but diplomacy tends to grind exceeding slow. Stay with us, Graham. We'll move on now. The next person we're going to talk to, if TJ has time to call him in between, is Ed Jardine in London, who's organised a protest outside the Russian embassy. He's an Aussie expat, so it's interesting that Aussies over there seem to be having more success at getting things going than Aussies here.
The Rainbow Report. News, opinion and current affairs for the rainbow community.
Joy 94.9.
This is Doug Pollard with me in the studio, Dr. Graham Willett. We're typing in an interminable telephone number in an attempt to reach London at the moment, where Ed Jardine is organising a protest at the Russian embassy. We'll bring that to you as soon as we can. Graham, why do you think that there's been so much more of an upwelling of response to this in places like America and Europe than there has been in Australia? Because it seems like it's, apart from giving up Russian vodka, we don't seem to be awfully interested here.
No, we tend to be a bit behind anyway. But, of course, North America and Western and whole slabs of Europe have been extremely busy politically over the last couple of years. Lots of demonstrations, lots of protests. Occupy, for example, which did happen here, was much bigger in those parts of the world. So I think there's a kind of a pattern of political activism that is strong. And, of course, in all of those countries, gay and lesbian issues have been fought out and had major successes lately around same-sex marriage in the United States, for example. So I think the people have been agitating, they are active, and they've attached themselves to this issue, partly the nature of the issue, but also because they're in the habit of doing stuff.
It's also much closer. It's on the doorstep.
I suppose. Yeah, but I don't
Sarah
feel
Palin can see Russia from her house.
Fat lot of good that's going to do anybody.
But I think it all comes down to the fact that Australians seem to be just a little bit more, what's the word I want, laconic, shall we say, about these things. We don't seem to be very great sort of shouters in the streets, apart from a small minority on the very extreme left.
Well, because the other thing that's going on here, of course, is the refugee stuff, which is absorbing vast amounts of energy for the kind of people who might otherwise have been taking up these issues. So it's inevitable, I think. I mean, we've been very politically disengaged for a long time here, very cynical about what politics can achieve. I think these kind of broader issues also play into what's happening and what's not happening.
Yeah. I mean, London, for example, is a classic example of a place where you can turn out thousands of people for Pride, whereas in a place like Melbourne, getting more than a couple of thousand doesn't really happen very much. Is that a function of the fact that the UK just has so much bigger a population and a bigger pool to draw on? It
has a bigger population. London is massively bigger relative to the rest of the country than either Melbourne or Sydney are. We have big cities, but they're scattered. So if people want to demonstrate in Britain, they can jump on trains and go to London relatively easily. And for a big event like this, I imagine this could be quite large.
Yeah, I think someone once said to me this. There's, London's the same size as Melbourne, but the population's the same size of all of Australia.
Right, yes.
So, I mean, that's a kind of...
And they have a great public transport system, so it's easy to get into town.
Which we don't have here. Now, I think we may have got somewhere with our call here, and joining us on the line now is Ed Jardine from London. Hello, Ed.
Hello
Ed.
there.
How are ya?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing great. Now, I got your message a short while ago. You're organising this demonstration, which was going to be outside the Russian embassy, but it's had to move.
That's right.
Why is that?
We've had such a good response from everybody. We've had what we thought was going to be about 100 people. We've now got about 2,000. So it's been a fantastic response from the community here. And we've been monitoring the page. And they are actually, all the people who are on the page are actually from London. So these are real people who are coming.
How many people have you got now on our Facebook page who have said they're going to turn up?
On the Facebook page, people who say they turn up, we've got nearly 2,000, but we've got around 20,000 invitees. We started off with about 1,000, and it's just gone viral. So it's fantastic. It's a great show of support here for our Russian friends.
Is this story making headlines in the UK? Is the mainstream press talking about all this?
It's not really. There was an article in the Guardian on Monday.
Where else?
It's really good. You can visit that online, which outlines the laws. And this is something that we sort of based our protest on. It sort of outlines the laws that have been implemented in Russia, and there's a fourth one that's coming in, which gives the police the right to take children away from LGBT families, and it's just preposterous, and we're just not prepared to do nothing about it.
There have been calls for people to boycott the Winter Olympics. Are you taking a position on that?
Well, I think that's everyone's choice. I know a lot of people who are very passionate about saying we should boycott vodka, we should boycott the games. I'm not sure that that's really going to help. Pouring vodka down the drain will make you feel better and probably is good for your liver. But I think what we're trying to do is we're trying to lobby. We want to be visible outside Downing Street. We want to be visible at the embassy if we can. And maybe that might happen another time.
And maybe get
we
maybe
want
get
to be lobbying.
And maybe get the politicians to actually get on board with this and say something.
Well, hopefully we'll be noticed. We're hoping to get enough media coverage from radio here, and we've got people talking about us on Gaydar radio here. We're hoping to get the BBC along, and whoever wants to notice, and we'll be signing a petition as well to hand in to the government.
So what's an Aussie in London doing organising a demo? You done this kind of thing before? I thought all you went to do there was work in. Or I thought all the Aussies I know who go to London just go there to either work in bars or drink in them. If I can use a stereotype for a moment.
I think Facebook's a very powerful thing, and when you know people who are passionate about things, it starts sort of snowballing. And a friend just said to me, I'm just disgusted about this, and I said I am too. And I said, well, what are we going to do about it? And said, well, let's not just sit on our hands and do nothing. Let's do something.
Yeah, we've got Dr. Graham Willett here in the studio. Graham, that's how it starts, isn't it? Somebody saying, it's me, I've got to do something.
Always, yes. It's exactly those kind of conversations that get things going. I was going to ask, will you be marching as well? Where's the embassy compared to where you're actually starting?
Unfortunately, the logistics in putting a march together are a lot different to a static protest, and it comes with a lot bigger sort of organisational, a lot bigger amount of organisation than we have time to put together. So what we want to really do is just have a static protest, a peaceful protest, and we have to move it because the numbers we got. Really, just we couldn't do it outside the embassy and do it safely for everybody. The embassy is conveniently sort of tucked down a sort of embassy lane in Kensington Park, and there's no public access. So we would have been lining up along Bayswater Road And if it was, 100 or 200 people, possibly that would be okay. But with the numbers that they're expecting, the police advise us that it's not going to be safe, and they won't support it.
So where have they moved you to, or where have you moved yourselves to? I mean, where is that in relation to anything?
Well, we've worked very hard with the police, and they've moved us, and they've allowed us to protest outside Downing Street, basically, which we think is fantastic. It's a lot more visible. So it's in the middle of Whitehall. It's on Richmond Terrace, which is near Westminster Tube. It's from 1 till 4 on Saturday the 10th of August.
In case anyone listening wants to be there.
We're inviting people to bring banners, and we'll be chanting, and there'll be a megaphone, and we'll be monitored closely by the police, hopefully by the media as well.
Well, if you're on Whitehall, you're almost guaranteed, aren't you, to get noticed?
Absolutely.
So that is an improvement in that sense.
Right.
At the end of the day, do you think this protest has got legs? Do you think it's going to grow from here, or is it just going to be a flash in the pan?
I hope so, and I think it mobilises people to think about things that are going on, and there's stuff going on in Zimbabwe and Uganda and now in Greece that really just. You just look at it's becoming more and more news about it in the press and on the social media.
Yeah.
It's hard not to notice, and it's even harder not to do something.
It is. I said a few things about Greece on this show last week, and I got into the station today to find in my pigeonhole a brochure for Greek holidays and a card asking me if I'd like to be a friend of the Hellenic Museum in Melbourne. So I guess somebody was listening and wants me to go and find out that Greece is really quite a lovely place.
It's the same way as they do, doesn't it?
So maybe after today I'll get an invitation to go and visit Russia. Who knows?
Ed, I'm not planning on getting a visa to go to Russia anytime soon.
No, I have friends here who are, and say that is not going to let them be put off. And there's also a strong movement that I'm seeing on Facebook and elsewhere, say, rather than boycott the Olympics, either the athletes or the spectators, but to turn up. And to turn up, because the IOC has said Putin's given you safe passage, you won't be prosecuted under these anti-gay laws. So why don't we all turn up wearing pink? Why don't we all turn up wearing rainbow flags and rainbow pins and rainbow patches? Why don't we hand all the athletes rainbow gloves so they can do rainbow salutes, like the Black Power salute on the podium?
Absolutely. And I saw a great one this morning that said, it would be great if sort of on TV at the closing ceremony, straight and gay athletes all gave each other a kiss.
Yes, it would. And also I noticed the Gay Games and a whole coalition of gay sporting organisations today put out a statement asking Jack Rogger, who's the president of the International Olympics Committee, to support and to run a Pride House at Sochi under their wing, as it were, so that it would be safe.
Well, look, if anything we can do to help get that sort of going, I'm hoping that what we're doing is going to help.
Well, I hope so, Ed. Thank you very much for joining us today, and best of luck with the protest.
Thanks for having me.
And
keep an eye on us.
Oh, we will, and do let me know how it goes.
Will do. Thanks, Doug.
All right. Thank you very much. That's Ed Jardine there in London. You've got details of the protest there. In that conversation, there will also be details on the joy.org.au/Rainbow Report page. I've put a link through to their Facebook page. So if you happen to be listening from London or anywhere in Europe within reach of London, then off you go. We just had a message in here from Matt. He says, this is such a difficult dilemma. The Melbourne Lord Mayor, Robert Doyle, refused to cut ties between the sister city of St. Petersburg because he says that will further isolate LGBT citizens in Russia. However, without real action, what's going to change? Furthermore, I'd be interested to hear how the UN's new Free and Equal campaign will challenge Russia on their LGBTI rights violation. I'm hoping to talk to someone from that campaign in a future programme. And this whole thing was, of course, covered on Gay Newsweek this week. You can get the podcast of that at joy.org.au. That's Matt from Gay Newsweek getting a nice little plug in there. Coming up next, we're going to try and get hold... We're going to be doing a lot of trying to get hold of people today. We're going to try and get hold of Nikolai Alexeyev of Gay Russia. He's over in Geneva, so bear with us. We might be a little time coming back to you. And TJ, you've got to play a lot of filler.
The Rainbow Report. News, opinion